Yes.
Okay, shall we start the session now?
Yeah.
Okay, before starting the session, let me introduce myself. I am Arvind Kumar, and I'm having 6+ years of experience in training, especially in .NET training. And I have conducted many trainings in many of the organizations like Accenture, Wipro, HCL, TCS. Apart from it, I have also, basically my strength in .NET is C Sharp, ASP.NET, WPF, and WCF. So today I'm here to conduct a training or just a demo session for .NET Framework or Introduction to .NET Framework and Objective or .NET Framework basically. So before starting of this training, before starting of this demonstration, I wanted to make sure that yes, you are having a bit knowledge of C and C++ of any other of the programming language, which make you more comfortable to understand this training, this session. If it is not, then also it's okay. So let me start the session first, and here we are going to understand the .NET framework. So before going to any of the technology or before understanding any of the framework, let's understand what basically means. As we know that .NET is basically a technology which is some features and built-in languages which are basically being supported by the .NET framework. But before understanding this .NET framework, we need to understand that what is framework basically. So to understand this framework work, let us take one very simple realistic example. Like if you want to cut a paper of A4 size paper, what would you do in simple sums? Simply you will require one scissor and one scale, and then you will map it clearly, and after doing the measurement, you will simply cut a paper by a scissor. Am I right? Can you hear me? Hello?
It's clear.
Yeah, it's clear. I want audience to be interactive. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, I was talking about framework. So to understand .NET framework, we were going through the framework part first, so that we can easily understand that what .NET framework does for us. So in short, if the example which I was giving is that if I want to cut a paper of A4 size, simply what I would be doing, I need one scissor and scale, and after measuring the paper, I need to cut it in a proper, with the proper measurement. It looks quite easy if the paper is 1, 10, 100, 200, if the number of papers are 100, 200 or 400 something. But actually, we are using millions of papers every day. And for that, we need to cut millions of papers. And in that case, what we require? We will require one frame, or we can say, in short, we can say that we will be requiring one machine, and where we can put a bundle of raw papers, and then we can press a button, and after that the paper should be cut at once. Like thousands of papers should be cut at once. So that thing basically does by a framework known as a particular machine, which is basically being used to cut A4 size paper. In the same thing, when we talk about .NET frameworks, so .NET framework basically gives us that environment. Because framework is what? Framework is just an environment which is basically used to create the applications. The application may be Windows, console, web-based, web services, data-centric application. The application may be any kind of applications. Now, the basically .NET framework introduced by Microsoft aims at integrating various programming languages and services. The .NET framework is designed to make significant improvements in code reuse, code specialization, resource management, multi-language development, security, deployment, and administrator. To understand in a simple words, it is basically a technology that supports creating, or we can say developing, the web application, running the web application, debugging the application, to check the application whether it is as expected or not. So it is a simple sort of technology, and the .NET framework is designed to fulfill some objectives. The objectives are a consistent object-oriented programming environment where we need, because here we are going to work with with the help of .NET framework, we will be basically creating object-oriented programming applications. So .NET framework consists of all the technologies that help in creating and running robust, scalable, and distributed application. To understand these concepts, let us understand that what .NET Framework basically consists of. .NET Framework consists of .NET products, .NET services, and .NET Framework. Let us understand each component of the .NET suite in detail one by one. So .NET Framework, if we talk, the very first component of .NET Framework is .NET products. So .NET products aims at allowing developers to create applications which are capable of interacting seamlessly with each other. In short, if we have created one application, there are many applications which are available which can be created through .NET frameworks. So here what we want our developers to create applications which are capable of interacting seamlessly with each other. And all .NET products are extensible markup language for describing and exchanging data between applications. An example of .NET product is Visual Studio. So in short, if you want to create any application using .NET framework, we are simply using a IDE known as Visual Studio.NET. This Visual Studio.NET IDE is is basically a product which you can create any kind of application which you want. In short, in the beginning of the programming methodology, we were creating simple console-based applications. I hope you all are very much aware of command CMD or command prompts, where we are simply using characters. So there are two types of user interface which we guys are having, CUI and GUI. So with the help of CUI applications, if you want to create CUI application, we were having console application templates available in Visual Studio. I would like to show you the Visual Studio application first so that you can easily understand. So to start Visual Studio, we'll click on Start button and then we'll go to All Programs. And inside that, we are having Visual Studio 2010. You do not need to get into .NET Visual Studio right away. Just I wanted to show you that how the Visual Studio product or .NET product looks like. So this is the simple simple demonstration of Visual Studio. Here you can see any kind of project wherever I want to create, I will get n number of templates available for me. I can create Windows Phone application, WPF application. It's again the new technology which is added in .NET Framework 3.0. We are not going to get into it right away. And console application, basically CUI based application, and Windows Phone application, which we can see it is GUI kind of application which we can create through .NET Frameworks, this product known as Visual Studio. And apart from it, we can websites or MVC kind of applications. And apart from it, we can create SharePoint or like in Windows applications and web form applications, data center this Visual Studio. So there are .NET services available, services, so you can create web services using .NET Framework, and application or business logic that is accessible through standard internet protocols such as SEP, SOAP. You can identify the service by URL. So basically, to understand this, let us have a simple example of IRCTC. Or in short, if I'm talking about, there are many applications are available at present time. They are using .NET Web Services. Microsoft has come up with its own set of web services known as My Services. Passport authentication services are also there. The service allows users to access databases, calendars, home books, addresses, and personal references to the passport authentication service. So there are many .NET service available, and apart from it, the last one we do have the .NET Framework. So again, we are coming back to the .NET Framework to understand this part. So it's a foundation for designing, developing, and deploying the applications. So if you want to design the application, if you want to develop the application, and if you want to deploy the application, we need a framework which is basically .NET Framework is. I have already given you a simple example of .NET Framework, like why it is required. .NET Framework is software framework developed by Microsoft that runs primarily on Microsoft Windows. Basically, this framework was designed to create to run on Microsoft Windows. It includes a large set of libraries, provides language interoperability. We will understand it one by one in detail. So there are many components of .NET Framework which are available. Number one, CLR, Common Language Runtime. Then .NET Framework Class Library, User and Program Interfaces. Actually, These slides are basically designed for some sort of experienced people. I would like to give you a very simple framework or .NET framework. In short, like visually, there must be one graphical, but I would like to tell you some components of .NET framework in short. .NET framework basically consists of .NET compatible languages. .NET framework consists of common language runtime. .NET framework consists of framework class library. .NET framework consists of common language runtime. So we need to understand that what is .NET framework compatible languages. Most of us, like the key features of .NET compatible languages are the language must be standardized by ECMA. ECMA is basically short form of European Computer Manufacturing Association, and a language which is standardized by ECMA can be a .NET supportive language. It must be component based, it must be object oriented, a language must be robust and durable. So the language which is, there are almost 46 languages are available at this time which are being supported by .NET framework. The second point is, so what are those languages? Basically some example of .NET framework compatible languages are VB, Visual Basic, Visual C++, C#, JavaScript, and many more languages are there which are being supported. Some Python and Ruby variants, .NET variants of Pythons and Ruby are also available, which are known as third-party languages. And these languages are also being supported by .NET framework. So, but the question comes, like, do we need to learn all the languages to use .NET framework? The answer is no. We do not need to learn all the languages. We need to learn at least one language to work with .NET framework. And the second point is common language specification, which is known as CLS. Common language specification basically ensures code which is source code compiled by a .NET compiler should interoperate with the .NET framework. And the CLS describes a short set of features that different languages have in common. And CLS also includes a subset of the common type system, which is a third part of .NET framework. I will come to that point as well. And so basically CLS or common language specification, if we'll talk about this, the basic purpose of common language specification is to understand it. Let us segregate this common language specification in simple words, that the specifications which are common in all .NET compatible languages are known as common language specifications. So there are multiple languages which we can use with .NET framework. So if we want to interoperate with one language to another language, because .NET framework gives us a feature like a code which is written in VB.NET can directly communicate with a code which is written in C#. How come? Because .NET and VB both are the different languages, but because of common language specification, our code which is written when it is required to understand it, like there are the possibilities that the developer in one organization is very good. One developer A is having a very good knowledge of VB.NET, and another developer is having C# or maybe VJ hash or C++. So in that case, what will happen? Option 1, we can ask every developer to learn a single technology. Number 2, we can ask every developer to learn every technology, which is not at all feasible. So what we want, we can allow the developers to work in their own languages, and after that, the code which is written in A language can communicate with the code which is written in B language. And this feature is basically given by common language specification, which is a part of .NET framework. The next part is common type system. This common type system also plays a very important role in cross-language interoperability, because it enables cross-language integration, type safety, and high-performance code execution. It provides an object-oriented model where all types are derived from common class known as system.object. So here, common type system basically gives us a base class which is system.object. Any class which we are creating in our code or any class which we are writing, ultimately it is inheriting from system.object class. We will understand this inherit word in the next consecutive sessions. It supports two main categories. Basically, CTS have two main categories, value type and reference type. So these value types and reference types are the two data types which are available with us. So let me just get into it. So this is what the CLR .NET Framework Common Language Specification which we are understanding. And now let us understand .NET Framework Class Library, which is known as FCL, or we can say. So .NET Framework Class Library consists of some namespaces, and it is very useful when it basically consists of the methods, interfaces, namespaces, which are enumerations, which are reusable, like the language, the code which is required to use again and again, that is kept inside .NET Framework Class Library. This .NET Framework Class Library contains many namespaces like system.web, system.windows.forms, system.drawing, system.data, system.xml, and the major or the basic or the first namespace which is there, like system namespace, which is the base namespace which we have to use when we are going to create any of the .NET application. So there are many things like why this framework class library works and how this framework class library works basically. If you want to create a simple Windows based application, like if you want to create some Windows forms, in that case, to understand that there might be the possibility that you are not understanding that what is Windows form application and what is web form applications. So to understand this, let me give you a very simple example. I think you all have worked with MS Office kind of application. This MS Office is basically a Windows based application, and when I'm talking about web form application, means I'm talking about a website. So websites we all are very much familiar with, and if we are now, I'm coming back to the point, like if you want to create a Windows form application, then we need some built-in class, built-in methods which can be used with the framework, because it is not always good to write code for adding a button. It is not always good to write the code for placing a text box in our Windows form. So what this framework class library does for us, that it has created some built-in classes like form class, button class, message box class, list control class. There are many classes which are available, and by reusing those classes, we can create or we can design our form very easily. And the same point at the same time, if you want to write some code for those particular buttons or labels or controls, or if you want to perform some business logic, there are some built-in classes which we can reuse to make our task easy. So this is the basic purpose of .NET Framework Class Library. So in short, like as we can see on the screen, like .NET Framework Class Library gives us some built-in classes, namespaces, methods, properties, events, enumerations, interfaces, delegates, which can be used with Windows form application, WPF application, console application, web form application, web services application, or data centric applications, even for mobile applications as well. Now coming back to the next slide, how our application is being executed in .NET Framework is very important. The very first point is what? When a developer writes its code, this code is known as source code. This source code may be written in any of the programming language which is being supported by .NET Framework. So the code may be written in VB.NET, VC#. So first of all, .NET Framework gives us the specific compiler for the specific language. Like for VB, we are having VBC.exe, which is known as VB compiler, Visual Basic Compiler. For C#, the .NET Framework gives us a special compiler known as CSC.exe. So the code which is the source code which has been created or developed by the developer need to compile first. So this source code would be compiled by the specific compiler. If you can see here, so this VB.NET source code would be compiled by the compiler, and then the compiler will generate one MSIL known as Microsoft Intermediate Language. This MSIL is basically nothing, it's a assembly. Assembly is a simple short of we will talk about, like assembly is a very important point, very important part of any of the programming language. Because of this MSIL, our application are platform independent as well. So MSIL is known as Microsoft Intermediate Language. So once source code is compiled by the compiler, it would be converted into either exe file or in DLL file. So exe and DLL both are known as MSIL, or in short assembly file. Then this assembly file basically goes to a component of .NET framework known as CLR. The full form of CLR is Common Language Runtime. This Common Language Runtime basically having 5, or we can say the 4 important parts. Number 1, assembly loader. Number 2, code verifier. Number 3, just-in-time compiler. So how it basically works? Number 1, the assembly loader will load the assemblies which are referenced to our code, because there are the possibilities that you are using some pre-created code or you are using the framework class library code. So in that case, those assembly would be loaded. Then code verifier will check for the code, and just-in-time compiler will convert your MSIL into managed native machine code. This managed native machine code basically runs on your operating system. So this is the simple execution model of .NET application. I simply want to show you in a one line, like source code compiled by a specific compiler will be converted into MSIL. MSIL will go for the execution, not directly. If first it will goes to CLR. CLR will, the component of just-in-time or CLR known as just-in-time compiler will convert it into native machine code, and then this native machine code will goes for the execution. Hello. So this is a simple diagram, or we can say the representation of that execution environment. So source code compiler will convert into either in exe or DLL file. Then class loader just-in-time compiler basically will convert it into managed native machine code, which basically goes for execution after security check. So this is a simple compilation and execution of .NET framework. Now if you can see, this is what the .NET framework architecture which I was telling you, like it contains .NET compatible programming languages, common language specifications, and this is nothing, this is framework class library, like which consists of ASP.NET Web Services and Web Form applications, Windows Form, Edu.NET, base class library if you can see, and this contains these technologies along with base class library. And then a very important and major point is known as Common Language Runtime, which is nothing, it is an execution engine for .NET applications, and this everything is available in Visual Studio.NET, right? So this is a simple architecture of .NET framework. Now as we have already discussed about Common Language Runtime, let us understand a bit more, let us get into it a bit. Like CLR is basically environment where all programs in .NET are executed. The code that you have developed with the language compiler that targets the runtime is called managed code. So there is managed code which is basically targeted to CLR. There are 2 types of code which are available. Number 1, managed code. Number 2, unmanaged code. So managed code is basically the code which is being executed in CLR is known as managed code, and the code which is directly executing on operating system is known as unmanaged code. We will understand this unmanaged code in the next consecutive sessions. So it basically benefits from features such as cross-language integration. So there are some features of Common Language Runtime. Number 1, and execution. So there are some services which are being, right? So secure execution of code, automatic memory management, interoperability, and exception handling. These are some common features or services which are being provided by Common Language Runtime. We can get into it one by one, like security management, tax safety, JIT compilation, platform dependence, CLS and CTS. Okay, these everything, the first concept known as garbage collector. So garbage collector is again a very important part of CLR will basically for us Italy and with feature are selected. And I have already discussed about this, that platform independence basically gives us because of this ex intermediate language file. This is common to every any kind of execution. This is by platform independence. Then security management will come to this point where we can, whenever we are executing our code, so before executing the code, there are some security checks which need to be performed. Types and we have already discussed about it. Okay, so base class library. Class library provides classes, interfaces that can be used in a code to accomplish a range of common programming tasks such as string management, data collection, database connectivity, and file access. So it basically gives us some classes, class library which works with any .NET languages such as VB, VC++, V.NET, and VC++. So this is what framework class library basically it contains: namespaces and assembly. So namespaces, logical collection of classes. In short, if you will understand this namespace concept, maybe you are not aware of this namespace, it may be new for you. Namespace is nothing, it's just a folder. In short, if you will understand namespace in similar way, we can understand it as a folder contains many files. In the same manner, namespace contains many classes. So we can understand folder by a namespace, or namespace by a folder, and some files by the classes. So namespace contains many classes inside it. It may contains another namespace into it. So namespace may contains the namespace as well as the classes. So the very first system namespace, known as the very basic system.object, is the ultimate base class for all classes in .NET Framework. It is the root of the type hierarchy, and assembly is a physical collection of the classes which we have created. So how common language runtime loads, compiles, and runs the assembly? So the assembly which contain MSIL code, which is not actually executable, as we have already discussed, because when the compiler compiles the source code, it creates MSIL for it, and this MSIL cannot be executed directly. So the CLR loads this MSIL code from the assembly and converts it into the machine code that the computer requires. So it loads, number one, it loads the assembly that the application references. Then the two, verifies and compiles the assembly into the machine code, and then it executes the assembly. Once the JIT has been converted, once it's converted to given native machine code, and machine code is nothing, it is code which can be executed on operating system directly by common language runtime, and then it runs the executable assembly to us. Okay, so we are talking a lot about assemblies, and so let us understand this assembly. Assembly is basically a single deployable unit that contains all the information about the implementation of classes, structures, and interface. What does it mean? Like, to create any application, we may need to write like some classes, methods, some structures, enumerations, interfaces, and when we compile it, all the information of our source code basically comes inside the assembly. The assembly may be .dll or .exe. So we will understand it, that when it would be .exe and when it would be .dll. So in short, assembly contains some components. Number one, manifest, type metadata, MSIL code, and resource. So there are four very important parts of assemblies which are there. So before you can run Microsoft Intermediate Language, it must be compiled against common language runtime to native code for the target machine architecture, because MSIL does not contain any information about the operating system on which it is going to execute, because MSIL cannot be executed directly. The reason is what? Because how operating system will execute it, assembly does not have, MSIL does not have any information about it. So MSIL must be converted into native machine code, and the .NET Framework provides two ways to perform the conversion. Number one, .NET Framework just-in-time compiler. Number two, native image generator which is known as nggen.exe. What JIT compiler does, let us understand that one by one. JIT compiler converts MSIL to native code on demand at application runtime. When the content of assembly are loaded and executed, then JIT compiler will compile each and every code of your each and every line of your code one by one into machine code. There are many compilers. There are three types of JIT compiler available: pre-JIT, econo-JIT, and normal JIT. So pre-JIT compiles complete source code into native code into a single compilation cycle. This is done at the time of deployment of the application. When application is ready and we want to deploy it on our machine, like in short, if you wanted to install it on your machine. So when you are deploying your machine, then pre-JIT is being performed. Because ultimate all the code would be compiled by one and it would be stored on the particular location on your machine, and whenever you are clicking on any of the shortcut of your application, it would recollect that pre-created code and it will execute the code. Econo-JIT compiles only those methods that are called at runtime. However, these compiled methods are removed when they are not required. So each time when you need some method, the JIT would be performed. That is known as econo-JIT. And the third one known as normal JIT. So normal JIT compiles only those methods that are called at runtime. These methods are compiled the first time they are called, and then they are stored in a cache. When the same methods are called again, the compiled code from cache is used for execution. So native image generator, which is known as NGen. This native image generator is a tool that improves the performance of managed applications. NGen.exe create native images, which are files containing compiled processor specific machine code, and installs them into the native image cache on the local computer. And this runtime can be used, like if you have created any application and that application you have deployed, and after that you need something which can be placed, which can be stored on your machine, and whenever you need that particular application to be executed, then the image which has been created by NGen.exe would be reloaded and the application would be executed. It performs the conversion from MSIL to native code before rather than while running the application. So basically, it will convert MSIL into native code, not at the time when your application is running. It will convert MSIL into native machine code in advance or before running the application. It compiles an entire assembly. It compiles an entire assembly at a time rather than method at runtime. So it persists the generated code into native image cache as a file on disk. So there are many advantages of .NET framework, like consistent programming model, multi-platform applications, and multi-language integration, automatic resource management, ease of deployment. So to provide a consistent object-oriented programming environment, whether object code is stored and executed locally but internet distributed, or executed remotely.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. So can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Arvind.
Yes. So this is all about .NET framework, which I would like, which I wanted to tell you. So in short, .NET framework is just an environment to create our application, to execute our application, to design our application, and to run our application. So this is all about Microsoft .NET framework, which I would like to tell you. I hope you could understand some of the points. If you have some questions, please let me know. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Do you have any question?
No.
Hello.
Yes, Arvind.
Yes. So I'm done from my side.
Okay. Hello, Arvind.
Yeah. Please.